To seize the initiative. Remember Labour's party conference in September when Ed Miliband shocked the pundits, pledging energy price freezes if Labour was to be elected in 2015. The Tories warned of Marxism, but then it was rumoured this morning that the government asked energy companies to freeze prices until the election. The Treasury quickly denied this, saying they're looking to reduce the industry's green commitments. Labour accused the energy companies of profiteering, with the average household paying around £1,300 a year. But the Tories blame environmental and social levies, which of course they voted for as well as Labour, which makes up 8% of the average household bill. That's around £112 a year, a lot if you're on an average or below average income. And the energy companies agree, pointing to government requirements such as something called the Eco Scheme and the Warm Home Discount, which they say only make around 5% profit in total. Though the profits for the power that they generate, well, that's more like a very toasty 20%. And remember, they do kind of sell the power to themselves. The energy companies say the problem is those pesky wholesale prices. Ofgem disagrees, claiming wholesale costs have risen by less than 2% in the last year. This is what David Cameron had to say this morning.
I've said all along that I want to help households and families by getting sustainably low energy prices. Now, the only way you can do that is by increasing competition and rolling back the costs of some of the levies on people's bills. I said that's what we were going to do. That is what we're going to do, and I think that's a very positive step forward. That's a world away from making a vague promise about something you might do in 20 months' time with no idea about how you're going to do it. That is a con. What we're dealing with is real policy that can make a real difference.
Well, that was the Prime Minister. He's at the European Summit in Vilnius. We're joined now by the Shadow Energy Minister, Tom Greatrex, and from OVO Energy, their Managing Director, Stephen Fitzpatrick. Welcome to you both. Do you have a clear idea yet what the government's planning?
No.
Do you have a clear idea what the government's planning?
No, I think we've just got another day of complete confusion from the government about what they're doing, and I'm not surprised you get the Treasury and DEC saying different things because they have a record of doing that over the last year or so.
If the government was, though, to get some kind of agreement to freeze energy prices and to get an agreement to cut some of the green levies, either because they go or they're moved on to general taxation, that would be quite an achievement.
Well, I think the energy companies, almost as soon as a day or two after Ed Miliband's conference speech, started talking about the green levies. That's something which they've then focused the debate on and which the government have then sought to respond to. But what that doesn't deal with is the fundamental issues about the way the market works or the dysfunctional nature of the market. And the reforms that we propose, which didn't get as much attention as the price freeze, and which Ed Miliband and Caroline Flint are talking about in Manchester today with our Green Paper, the detail of that is about trying to reset that market so that it's clear, fair and transparent for consumers, but also importantly for industry, whether that's smaller companies like OVO Energy or the Big Six as well.
What do you think should be done?
I think it's become quite a political issue. I mean, it's always been a political issue. It seems much more so. We'd like to see actions that are going to affect customers' bills this winter. So we'd like to see a greater focus on competition. That's going to help some customers. And then better regulation, tougher regulation on the Big Six from Ofgem is going to help those customers who are unlikely to switch. So some of the political noises that we're hearing, they're helpful. But when we talk about things that are going to take effect in 2 or 3 years' time, I don't think that's what customers are really interested in.
But it may be for this winter, but you're not going to get reform of the marketplace and you're not going to get better regulation this side of the winter.
There's nothing that would stop real reforms being implemented or a change of approach or a different mandate from Ofgem being announced in this autumn statement.
Which would be what?
A change of mandate for Ofgem would be to intervene, not necessarily set pricing, but certainly do away with some of the profiteering that we see from the Big Six. A lot of the Big Six profits are made from a relatively small number of customers who are on the oldest tariffs, standard tariffs, so on. And Ofgem has talked about simplifying the market, more new tariffs and so on, and we hear these ideas from the political parties, and it's great that we're talking about it. But if the government were to say, Ofgem, we want you to do something about overcharging or very high margin tariffs today, I mean, they could figure it out. It could happen very, very quickly.
And you don't think there's the political will to do that there, or the expertise?
Perhaps less of the will, maybe more the expertise. I think the big energy companies have done a fantastic job of convincing everybody it's really complicated, but it's not.
Well, they've
different
made it
customers.
quite complicated. I mean, I look at
they
my
certainly
bill
have.
and it is pretty
Well, they
complicated.
make it opaque, and that's the point about the market. The market is structured in a way where the big companies have found ways to make it very, very complicated, very difficult for people to understand what's going on. That's the thrust of the market reforms that we've been talking about.
If you
over the
think
last
about
couple of
that,
years.
about the current market, you must really regret that Labour created this market.
Well, the market, the ability for the big companies to be able to be integrated and generate umbrella supply was a restriction that was lifted by John Major. The first change happened in 1995.
But you continued with all that.
And we've seen in the last 3-4 years, and particularly over the last couple of years, the extent to which it's become more and more of a problem. And we get more and more evidence, and Ofgem have been uncovering some of it, and Stephen and others have highlighted some of it in the points they've made at select committee hearings and other places, that actually this isn't working. So
Oh no, I
this is
understand
time
it's
to
not
properly
working, but
address it.
would it not give you more credibility if you put your hand up and said during the 13 years we actually encouraged this integrated vertical integration market, we allowed the number of energy companies to fall from a couple of dozen down to 6, and actually we just got it wrong. So and now we've seen the error of our ways and we're going to change it.
Well, I say
So have you seen the error of your ways?
the evidence has mounted, particularly over the last 3 or 4 years. At the last election in
after you
2010,
left power.
well, no, at the last election
It's
in
always
20,
like that, isn't it?
No, the last election in 2010. If you go back to the Labour's manifesto, the manifesto I stood on, in that manifesto we were making the point about Ofgem needing to have more powers and be tougher. The evidence since 2010 has mounted. We're now in a position where government should act. We tried to amend the energy bill to do these things. The government refused to do it.
I understand,
And
but-
if they turn around tomorrow or in the autumn statement said they were going to do it, no one would be more delighted than me.
So just to be clear, no mea culpa.
Well, just to be clear, the evidence has mounted since 2010.
So no mea culpa.
And the situation has happened that we've got a market now which is very, very difficult for people to see
Would
what's happening.
would Labour do anything about the green levies?
Well, I think we'll do something about the way the eco scheme works, because again, the eco scheme, which was introduced by this government, and when they talk about the green levies, you remember that 60% of it has been introduced by the coalition.
Yeah.
But the eco scheme has been demonstrated in the short time that it's been operating that it's very, very inefficient. Huge amounts of paperwork.
But that's only one of them. You see,
It is one of them, yeah.
you talk a lot about the need to get the market to operate better. I understand that. But you also talk about the need for a price freezer to get on top of prices. But under the Labour Climate Change Act of 2008, energy prices are specifically designed to rise by 40% by 2020. It was your policy to increase energy prices. So I'm just slightly puzzled that now you're in opposition, having set in motion a train of events that was specifically designed, not what happened by accident, not would be, oh, we didn't see that coming, was a specific purpose of the Act to increase energy prices by 40%. You're now complaining.
No, the purpose of the Act and the purpose of the action that's happened, and which actually yesterday we had an energy question to a Conservative minister saying it was his idea for the Climate Change Act, and Labour simply caught up and followed them.
That only
But
makes you all complicit.
But the point is that we have a situation where we have to move our new generating capacity is required. You have to think about how you best do that in a way that provides energy security.
Sure.
You have to also do that in a way, I believe, which minimises emissions. So you've got decisions to make about how the infrastructure is improved and renewed. And do you do that in a way where you have an oversupply of gas, or do you do it in a way where we have a balanced mix with renewables, nuclear and other forms of technology as part of the mix?
The coalition's been in power for over 3.5 years now.
Yes.
It's been clear for some time, actually it was clear under the last government, that the energy market in this country doesn't operate like a market should. It's not really a market at all. It may not be cartelized, but it's not a market. Because a cartel implies actually illegality and collusion. That may not be that, but it's not a free market, or even a market, strike the word free. Do you detect any sense that the government, A, has addressed this, and B, knows what to do about it?
They are listening. I suppose they're listening. I think there's a lot of different
That's a
conflicting. Look, we're talking about it. It's a great start. But when I hear that we need to think about how we're going to refresh our infrastructure and network and so on, and then I hear policies that are being announced, like a price freeze at some point in the future, where the price is not set or defined yet. It's just, you don't get certainty for consumers, but you create uncertainty for investors. So it seems like that's the problem where I've got, where this issue's become so political now that it looks like everybody's trying to reduce a very complex issue into a simple slogan to increase votes. And that may be politics, but energy is very, very important. A lot of people struggle to pay their bills. The last thing anybody wants is for the lights to go out, but we need to focus on value for money, transparency. I think competition is going to be the best way to lower bills over the long term. but it's going to take a long time, and I think people want
But
help.
people are going
right
to
now.
die this winter.
Ofgem's, this is the thing that just annoys me so much when I read about the regulations. Ofgem have announced a whole list of faults and problems with the market that reads like something from our website. Sticky customers being overcharged, Big Six, underhand behaviour. There's 10 pages of problems with the market, and their solution is energy companies can have 4 tariffs, and we'll see where we are in 2017.
Yeah,
It's 4 winters. I mean, how many people are going to be affected by then?
By an increasingly large chunk of our electricity bills is not made up of the cost of wholesale generation, not made up of the profits of the energy companies, not even made up of green levies. It's made up of the costs of distribution. Now, distribution, the costs are regulated by Ofgem, but they're becoming a bigger and bigger part, and that is because of the Climate Change Act of 2008, you have put a lot of electricity generation in areas that are nowhere near the national grid. So we have to build new grid lines from onshore, from offshore to get there. That's a big part of the energy price rise.
Well, the network costs will go up, and
Yeah.
then after next year they will level out. And Ofgem, you've seen last week, have used their role in terms of regulating some of those costs. But look, we do need that grid infrastructure upgrade.
But it's
we
a
probably
part
need
of the
that
bill.
whether or not. Well, it's because you said we moved the generation to places outside. Well,
you've got the Dorset Array, which is this huge offshore park that is being done. To connect that to the national grid, it's going to have to go through the New Forest.
Yeah, and
How much is that going to cost?
And we've had it in Scotland, the the Bewley-Denny line, which took 10 years, I think, to get
Costs
through
a
the
fortune.
process to get to.
But that's as a consequence of not just your policy, of Labour, Conservative and Lib Dem policies.
It's a consequence of having your new generation capacity partly from renewables, and you do that in the best places where you get the most efficiency out of it. Because you would be arguing with me, if we put renewables on sites where old power stations were and they weren't the most efficient, why are you building it there when you get 20%?
Well, as you know, I would be arguing with you whatever you do. That's my job.
Very good.
What are your thoughts on energy?
Well, my main thought, which is a slightly inconvenient one, is if you look down the table in Europe, Britain sits about somewhere in the middle in terms of its energy costs, but you wouldn't think that to listen to the debate.
Not if you strip out the government taxation, so VAT and so on.
Hang on, but we can't. I mean, we pay what we pay. What we pay.
No, you can.
You have to strip
our
out.
wholesale prices are among our basic energy prices are among the highest in Europe.
In Europe, exactly. But it, nonetheless, I mean, lived in Germany and countries where people pay a lot more because they simply accept the green argument at the moment more than we do. But it does seem to me that one of the problems that's been with policy in both parties, if you looked at Labour and Ed Miliband before the election, the focus was very much on green politics.
Sure.
If you looked at the Conservatives, Cameron wanted to
they were
realign
vying
his
to be
party.
greener with each other.
Everyone wanted to be greener
Sure.
than the other. So you have a kind of consequence. I know there are many other things, and you've made very good points about both of you about the way that the market is misstructured. But actually the fundamental point is you all wanted to sign up to this thing. You all wanted a certain direction of travel on green politics, and now you have the consequence.
The point is, whatever you do, we've got power stations that are coming to the end of their lives. Some of them you can extend for a little bit, not all of them, by no means any of them. So which source of power do you use?
All right.
And if you went to do it for gas,
Your
it wouldn't
message
necessarily
now
be
on
cheap.
prices
hold on, I'm
is
going to have
very
to
different to your
interrupt
green
because
message before the election.
I know we're going to be back to this, and we are overrunning, but I need to hear from you, Alex.
Well, I think this is precisely why voters lose faith in politicians. It's not that complicated. It has been apparent for a long time. Poverty campaigners, fuel poverty campaigners have been making this absolutely transparent to anyone in policy. No one can pretend they didn't know. No one can pretend they couldn't regulate that system better, because there are other examples of regulation of other industries in Britain at the moment which do that. And no one can, nor can anyone pretend that this is essentially a regressive tax on poor people to pay for the luxuries that politicians have imposed on them.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there, but we will be back on energy prices on the autumn statement live here on BBC Two on Thursday. We start at 10:45 in the morning because the Chancellor's brought the autumn statement forward to, we think, about 11:15. He's clearly got a lot to talk about. Maybe by Thursday he'll have worked out what he's actually going to do. Thank you for both of you for coming in. Now